Hi guys, so in this video I've got some bad news, as you can probably see from the title. If you've been enjoying these Tamron videos I've been doing, I've actually sold the Tamron 35-150 f2-2.8 lens, and in this video I'm going to explain my reasons why. I've got four main reasons, and only I would say only one of them is a proper negative. The other three are just personal preferences. So if you're still thinking about picking up this lens, don't be put off too much by what I say here, because it is a great lens overall. If you are someone who enjoys using zoom lenses and traditionally has been, say, a wedding photographer that goes a 24-70 70-200 combo, this lens really can pretty much cover everything that those two would do. The first reason that I've decided to sell this is on that I prefer primes. For photos, particularly at weddings, I just prefer the look that primes give you with that shallow depth of field, a wide open aperture, being able to get a lower ISO shot in challenging lighting conditions. The annoyance of having to switch lenses, I don't think is a big enough reason for me to be put off by that and sacrificing that f1.8, f1.4 look that you can get. I carry two cameras on me and a wee hip bag that allows me to keep at least three of the four main lenses that I would use throughout the day on me at all times. So I'll typically start the day with a 35 and a 50, and up until maybe candids or the ceremony, that'll probably do me for 90% of the time. When it comes to the ceremony, I'll maybe put on the 85 or a 135 and possibly go with the 35 or the 50 on the other camera. And when it comes to the couple shoot, if I'm the second photographer, which is what I do videos mainly, but then second photography is maybe more my sort of thing, I'll go 35-85 for that. And if I'm the main photographer, I do like 24-50, but those four, 35, 50, 85, 135 can pretty much cover me for the majority of the day, especially if I'm the second photographer. And my 24 that I use is the wee Samyang 24 1.8, so it's tiny and I can squeeze that into my hip bag as well, or even my pocket if I want to keep that as a fifth lens. So that's, to me, switching lenses, I can have them all set ready in my bag and it's literally just a quick switch over. It's not ideal, but I prefer doing that over sacrificing that wide aperture. Second reason is a bit of a nostalgic one, but there is some genuine reasons behind this. I found the Tamron 28-75 f2.8 lens more versatile and more useful for my applications. It's a 67mm filter thread on the 28-75, and that is the filter system that I am heavily invested in. I've got my 35 GM that I'm filming on just now. That's a 67mm filter thread. The 50mm GM, the Tamron 70-180, the Tamron 17-28, and the Sony 16-55 f2.8. When I'm videoing a wedding, those lenses will get used extensively throughout the day, whether it's a tripod camera, B or C cam, or gimbal, not gimbal, sorry, that's the Samyang, a handheld camera. They'll be my main lenses throughout the day on the wedding, and having the same filter size is quite a big thing for me. I think the Tamron 35-150 is a 77mm filter thread, or it might be 82, but whatever filter thread it is, I don't have any filters at that size. So I would have had to, if I was going to make full use out of that for video as well, I would have had to invest in it. I did use it at one wedding as a tripod camera inside a dark church, and it was great for having that extra reach. I could put the 35-150 on my groom camera and my 70-180 on my bride camera, and the two of them married up perfectly. I could get exactly the same composition on each camera, and really like that. But at the moment, I don't need that. I can use an alternative and crop and post if need be, because I film in 4K. So I've ended up selling it and going back to the Tamron 35-150 instead, because of its extra versatility. I also like that the 28-75 goes to 28. That extra little bit of width can be invaluable if you're wanting to set up. I usually use that on my wide safety camera at wedding ceremonies up the back, and having that 28 allows you to get the whole of the ceremony in shot, whereas 35 could be a little bit too tight at times. And if I ever need the extra reach, as I said before, I've got the Samyang 135, I've also got the Samyang 85 Mark II 1.4 and the Tamron 70-180. So really, I don't need 4 telephoto lenses. And that leads me into the third reason, is that I already have all the telephoto lenses that I really need. Typically at a wedding ceremony, videoing it is where I would use the most lenses at my disposal. I'll have my 3 tripod cameras set up, and 70-180 tends to stick to the bride all day, or the speeches. That'll be my main camera and lens. And then the groom camera, I'll either go at the moment the 85 Samyang. I think that if I'm quite far back, that's a good lens to put on to get me close enough. But I always film the groom camera with room to crop. I film in 4K and will crop if I need to in post and export at 1080p. I think that's just a safer option, because that camera won't be manned. I'll set it up once they're in position, get them focused and switch into manual focus, and go from there. If it's a tighter room, I'll maybe go the Sigma 56mm, which is an APS-C lens but gives you that 85 equivalent, or possibly even the Sony 35-1.8 if we're talking a really tight space. And the Tamron as well, the 28-75, again gives me that versatility if I need something a little bit wider. Now, the final reason I've sold it is probably the main reason and the biggest negative for me about this lens, the 35-150, and that's the autofocus speed, or it might be the accuracy of it, particularly with moving subjects and ones that are walking towards the camera. A couple of weddings I've done where I was the second shooter, I've found that it got a very poor hit rate when the bridesmaids or the bride was walking down the aisle. And I only use medium burst mode on my cameras at weddings. So on the A7 IV, I think that's 5 photos per second. So it's not a hugely demanding speed in terms of asking the lens to keep up with the autofocus. But I'll show you some examples here from a recent wedding, couple of weddings I've done, where it struggled to nail it. A lot of the shots are passable, but they're not 100% sharp. And that, for me, for a lens of that price and what you're hoping for that lens to be able to do in covering the whole wedding, just wasn't quite good enough. So let's have a look at a couple of photos here from a recent wedding, and I'm actually going to compare them to a Samyang equivalent at the same venue and just show you through the sequence of 5 or 6 photos that I've got. On the left here, we're going to have the Samyang 135, and on the right, we've got the Tamron 35-150. Now, most of these shots are probably passable, but I do want to show you where the Tamron's just let itself down a little bit. This was a wedding I was the second photographer at, so I don't want to show any of the bride at either wedding, as they're not strictly my photos. So starting off, let's zoom in and take a wee look. And they're probably, that's better, the Samyang, definitely sharper. This is probably passable on the Tamron, but it's not sharp. At full size, it's probably okay. The next one in each sequence there, let's have a look. And again, zooming in, Samyang looks good, and the Tamron looks good. So that's one hit for the Tamron. But unfortunately, it's not the best facial expression or positioning of her in terms of just looking down and not looking up. So this is why I think autofocus speed in a lens at these moments in the wedding day is so important, because unless you're rattling off 20 frames a second and you've got the top of the range G Master lenses, you're going to be more limited on which ones you can use when you get to the final edit. Next one for each. Again, both looking good on the surface. That Samyang's maybe a little less sharp than before, and the Tamron's a wee bit better as well there. It's not perfectly sharp, but it's definitely a little better than the previous frame and is passable. Samyang's also passable there, I would say. And then the last one of this bridesmaid and the fourth one in the sequence of the Samyang. Much better on the Samyang, and again, passable. It's not as sharp. It looks like there's a bit of motion blur or some sort of lack of sharpness in the eyes on the Tamron. Maybe I'm splitting hairs there. Let me know what you think. But both passable. Next bridesmaid in at the Tamron wedding, and have I got the fifth one, the Samyang one? So let's take a closer look. Samyang's okay. It's not brilliant. There's not been any additional sharpness put onto these. That looks much better for the Tamron. So I don't know if I can just jump back to that previous one. I think there's a big difference in the sharpness of the eyes between this one, this frame, and then this frame. So to me, that's nailed it on the Tamron. That has not nailed it, but it's passable. But that's what I mean about, I don't want, if I'm spending that much money on a lens, I expect it to be nailing it more often than, what do we get on that first bridesmaid? Maybe 2 out of 4. So I don't know, maybe my expectations are a bit too high. Should also note the Samyang's photos are all at f2.2 here, so it's not wide open and it's not at its most challenging aperture. But again, I've got a bit more experience with the Samyang from previous weddings, and I know it is not the fastest focusing lens either. So I always want to play that one a little bit safer with the aperture. But that's something I'm willing to sacrifice in this particular scenario. The Tamron's at f2.8, so you would hope that it can cope with that. Next up, and I think that's the one I'm already on there. Yeah, it is. So I've only got 2 more from the Samyang sequence. Samyang sequence, that's much better for that one. And the Tamron, again, that one is just, it's just lost that bit of sharpness and hasn't nailed it. If we go back to that first one, much better in terms of that sharpness. But then the very next frame, it's just lost it a wee bit. So yeah, another one that's a little bit disappointing there. Third one for this bridesmaid, and the last one on the Samyang one that I've got. Again, nailed it with the Samyang one. And this one, again, not very good. It's passable, but it's not sharp. and then just jumping to the last one for this bridesmaid, that's much worse. Really missed it there. I wouldn't even keep that one. Tough to say. It looks not too bad, full size, but then you zoom in and it's nowhere near it. So yeah, it's just disappointing. It's one of those that when I'm looking at my lens collection and I've got the Samyang 135, which has its pros and cons. It's not by any means a perfect lens, but it's cheap, it's lightweight, and it gets good image quality when it hits, and it's got that wide aperture, and did I say it's lightweight? So it's got loads of pros to it. Its main negative is I'd be cautious with it in situations like this. But with the Tamron, you're buying that lens to pretty much do it all. And that's one of the main selling points of it. But as this is shown, one of the most important parts of the day, and this is why I didn't use it at the outdoor wedding I did recently at Netherdale House that there's a video on. I didn't use it for the bride walking down the aisle because of that fear of it might not hit that many shots. So that for me is the main reason that I've ended up selling it. I have the Tamron 35-150mm and I've got quite a lot of sports photography experience with that lens, and it's much better. It's much quicker. It probably hits about 8 or 9 out of 10 in terms of focus. But yeah, just this Tamron 35-150 I was a little bit disappointed by in that regard, especially when these bridesmaids are not running down the aisle. So yeah, that's why I've ended up selling it. But as I say, if you can live with those negatives and you've maybe got an alternative lens that you could use for getting more usable shots from situations like that, it still gets you great image quality when it hits, and it's got that versatility of that huge range. So but yeah, I've gone back to the 28-75 and I'm keeping the 70-180 as well. I think for my situation, they're a better fit. Hope you've enjoyed this little series, guys, and let me know if you want to see more on the Samyang, if you want me to put that through more testing, or if you'd like to see any other types of videos like this. Thanks for watching.